The Gulf. President Maithripala Sirisena highlights the class difference between Western and indigenous medicine. Two premiers meet. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe meets his counterpart Narendra Modi during his visit to India. No confidence revisited. The joint opposition brings a no-faith motion against Minister Faisal Mustafa. JVP and UNP backbenchers pledge support. United Front. The Sri Lanka Freedom Party and the joint opposition look to explore the possibility of contesting polls together. Mitigating debt effect. World Bank says fiscal consolidation is not an option.
Sri Lanka now is at the verge of becoming an upper middle income country. So you not get the cheap debt anymore.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammika Kanayaka. Now our lead story this evening concerns indigenous medicine. Now Minister of Health Dr. Rajitha Senaratne states it is imperative to further strengthen the national health system by integrating traditional indigenous treatment methods while strengthening the Ayurveda medical education system in the country. He made this remark at the inauguration ceremony of the educational exhibition of the International Symposium on Traditional and Complementary Medicine today.
The educational exhibition and trade fair of the International Symposium on Traditional and Complementary Medicine, named TredMed International 2017 Sri Lanka, saw its inauguration today with the objective of strengthening the national health system and the globally prevalent traditional indigenous treatment methods.
A few months ago, when I met a group from the national medical field, they said that they represent neither the indigenous medical field nor Ayurveda. They said they represent another form of local medicine and said that they have no acceptance. They requested that they be registered and provide them with cancer and kidney patients so that they can cure them. They said they visited the health ministry and officials but were ignored. A doctor practicing Western medicine and an indigenous physician depicts a class difference in society. We should know how to protect and value what we have.
Speaking at the event, Minister Dr. Rajitha Senaratne said that Sri Lankan Ayurveda medical care currently has 30,000 practitioners, which is a larger proportion than Western practitioners in the country's health sector. He further stated that Ayurvedic practitioners are registered with the Sri Lanka Ayurveda Medical Council, and of which 40% are academically and institutionally qualified doctors.
Holding this event in Sri Lanka is justified by the rich indigenous traditional medical systems of our country, well entwined with our ancient civilization, with roots running back to the times of the Sri Lankan king Ravana of Ramayana fame. It is interesting to note that traditional and indigenous medical systems are well accepted by our people and hence coexist with Western medical practices complementing each other. Alternative medicine also has a cure to our health illnesses. Our only interest is because the Western medicine has not answered all the healthcare illnesses. There are a lot of blank areas whether we could fill that with other alternative medicines.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi commends Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe's efforts to strengthen Indo-Lanka ties amidst international political tensions experienced in the country. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe is currently in India and the two leaders met this afternoon at Hyderabad House in New Delhi.
The 5th Global Conference on Cyberspace commenced under the auspices of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi today. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe was invited as a special guest to grace the conference. The event saw the participation of over 10,000 delegates from 135 countries. Umang, also known as the Unified Mobile Application for New Age Governance, was launched by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi during the event.
Today, cyberspace has become a repository of information and knowledge, a key determinator in wealth creation, human development and social transformation. Yet, we need to strike a balance between individual freedom and the free flow of information and data. And the way I see it, good governance in cyberspace will play a pivotal role in striking this balance. We find that transparency is an integrated component of good governance.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe held bilateral talks with the Indian Premier Narendra Modi at Hyderabad House today. During these discussions, Modi pledged India's fullest support in assisting Sri Lanka to digitalize its education system, an effort to mark the 70th independence anniversary of Sri Lanka. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe assured the Indian Premier that Sri Lanka will be able to resolve issues which have cropped up in Sri Lanka-India joint ventures. Furthermore, bilateral discussions were held on strengthening ties between the two nations, including ways to boost trade and security cooperation.
13 parliamentarians representing the joint opposition submitted a no-confidence motion against Minister of Provincial Councils and Local Government Faisal Mustafa at Parliament today. Meanwhile, backbenchers of the United National Party also revealed that they are in support of the motion against Minister Mustafa.
The no-confidence motion submitted against Minister Faisal Mustafa states that confidence no longer lies with the minister as he has failed to hold local government election in a backdrop where the Election Commission is ready to do so. Citing such reason, the motion states that the minister must therefore resign from his post. 13 parliamentarians representing the joint opposition, including MPs Dinesh Gunawardena, Chama Rajapaksa, Bandula Gunawardena and Ranjit Zoisa, submitted the no-confidence motion to Speaker Karu Jayasuriya today with their signatures. The motion was also the topic of discussions at several media briefings today.
The JVP will submit a no-confidence motion against Minister Mustafa tomorrow. We don't know about their conditions, but the JVP has recognized the minister's faults. It is my personal opinion that we should bring in a no-confidence motion against the minister. I will give my support for one. We ask him to resign from the post with his head held high. There were others who did so. We can see the mistakes in his decisions. We will support whatever that is being presented by one of our party members. I don't believe that he broke the trust. He made many sacrifices. It was Minister Mustafa who had to take so much blame and criticism. He will win the no-confidence motion if they bring in one.
Meanwhile, parliamentarians representing the joint opposition met with the chairman of the Election Commission, Mahinda Deshapriya, today.
The appeals court order is effective for a limited number of areas. We asked him to hold the elections in other parts of the country. They are doing this on purpose. If this continues, we will have to shrink the map for elections. Election has become something that we have to take to the streets to gain. We are pointing our finger at the local government minister. We have two proposals for him. The first is to hold the election for those areas that are not considered in any court cases. The second is, if you can't hold elections on time according to the new system, then try the old system once more. I asked the Minister of Provincial Councils and Local Government a question, but he wasn't in Parliament today and he's not even in the country. He should hold these elections and if not, resign from his post. The elections kept on being postponed and it's only now that we understand who's behind all of this. We all protected the person responsible for the sake of the party's united responsibility. But we won't do that anymore. We will establish a joint UNP group among the back row MPs, just like how they have established the joint opposition. Now, the flavour of recent days, the postponement of the local government elections, was the subject which drew various views during today's parliamentary session as well. The local government election is being postponed day by day. As the UNP, our backbenchers object in this regard. All party leaders will have a meeting tomorrow. The Prime Minister too will discuss about this following his arrival. In fact, it is the court's decision. Neither you nor me can change it. The group has requested from court to only stop voting in few minor areas. Secondly, to stop the amended Gazette, which means the Gazette that was introduced by the previous president is valid.
ඒ අනුව ඡන්දය පවත්වන්න.
අපි හෙට කතා කරන්නේ ඒක ගැන. අපි හෙට කතා කරනවා ඒ ගැන.
මේක වෙනස් කරන්න I'm on my feet.
පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ කතා නායකවරයාට ඡන්දෙ තියන්න බෑ.
ඒ අනුව ඡන්දය පවත්වන්න පුළුවන් ආණ්ඩුවට හා කොමසාරිස්ට. මේ වෙනස් කරන්න ගිහිල්ලයි මේක වුනේ. සංශෝධනය කරලා හෝ.
As the Speaker, it is your responsibility to take a decision to hold the election as soon as possible, even through amendments.
ඒ නිසා ඡන්දයක් දෙන්න.
වගකීම ඉෂ්ට කරනවා මං.
The joint opposition has decided to only contest the upcoming polls with the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, provided the SLFP withdraw from the national government. The joint opposition arrived at this decision upon considering the proposal by the SLFP to contest the elections together.
Sri Lanka Freedom Party yesterday forwarded a written document to the joint opposition expressing their willingness to contest the local government elections together. The joint opposition group leader by former President Mahinda Rajapaksa met at the parliamentary complex last evening to discuss the SLFP's proposal. SLFP has proposed that the two factions contest some districts together while others can be contested separately. Alternatively, they have also suggested that they can contest under the banner of People's Alliance, while former President Mahinda Rajapaksa and former Prime Minister D.M. Jayaratne are the chairman and the general secretary. The chair is a symbol of the People's Alliance. SLFP further proposed that joint opposition have the majority in the Central Working Committee, provided the plans come to fruition. The joint opposition, however, has come to a firm decision that the SLFP should withdraw from the national government and end ties with the United National Party. They have also requested the opposition leader post for the joint opposition as well as the post of Prime Minister for Mahinda Rajapaksa once majority is achieved in Parliament. The joint opposition also requested the chairmanship of the SLFP if they are to contest the elections under the symbol of the hand. Accordingly, they have appointed MPs Mahinda Abewardena, C.B. Ratnayaka and Pavitra Vanyarachchi to continue the discussions with the SLFP on the proposals by both factions. Meanwhile, the Central Committee of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party met last night at the official residence of President Maithripala Sirisena. The Central Committee meeting ran for almost 3 hours and some of the party representatives talked to the media.
Yes, we held discussions. The SLFP does not think of splitting when we contest. We must all get together and work towards winning. If we all get together, it will not be an issue to make certain sacrifices. I do not know if there was an issue with positions or power. However, I do not think Mahinda Rajapaksa has made such a statement. Now moving on to the topic of fuel, Minister of Petroleum Resources Development, Arjuna Ranatunga is intent on eliminating the existing fuel mafia. The minister made his intentions clear while addressing the employees of the Petroleum Corporation in Galle yesterday.
A ceremony was organised yesterday to mark the inking of the collective agreement between the higher management of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and the members of its unions.
My policy is to protect state property. I cannot do it all by myself, and I need your assistance. I can create the path for you, but cannot make you walk. I have paved the way for various things. We will face various issues in the future. Many suggest to bring in a third party, and I'm not afraid to say it. I might not agree with those, but we have to show how we protect this. There is a fuel mafia. I will change it, and I will not allow such thing as long as I'm in this chair, and I would rather go home. I will not do and will not let anything happen which is malignant to the institution.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Derana 24/7.
Welcome back. Now, a car in which a family of 4 were travelling in veered off road and went into a canal, leaving 2 persons dead and 1 person missing. With this story and more, let's now take a look at across Sri Lanka.
A car carrying a family of 4 veered off in the canal in Mahiyangana, leaving the parents dead and 1 of their twin sons missing. The bodies of the parents were recovered with the vehicle, and the body of the deceased was recovered during search operation launched by divers together with area residents. A construction worker was left critically injured when he fell off a 5-storey building which was being constructed illegally in Hatton today. The International Space Station of the National Aeronautical and Space Administration of the United States was visible to Sri Lanka at 6:25 this evening. The space station was visible for 5 minutes. The first phase of the short-distance pedestrian network building in the suburbs of Colombo by the Minister of Megapolis and Western Development was inaugurated under the patronage of President Maithripala Sirisena today. The first phase is connected from Alcott Mawatha and R.D. Vijayawardena Mawatha in close proximity to Lake House.
Now, the Sri Lankan rupee closed marginally firmer today as dollar conversions by exporters outpaced importer demand for the US currency. The spot rupee closed at 153 rupees and 65 to 75 cents per dollar, compared with Wednesday's close of 153 rupees and 70 to 75 cents. Now, let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other currencies around the world. Now, State Minister of Finance Derana says Sri Lanka expects the Asian Development Bank to support the government's fiscal reforms agenda pertaining to debt. He said this speaking at a book launching ceremony to mark 50 years of partnership between the Sri Lankan government and the Asian Development Bank.
Organised by the ADB Resident Mission, the event saw the publication titled Sri Lanka ADB Partnership 1966-2016 launched. State Minister of Finance Eran Wickramaratne graced the occasion as the chief guest.
The ADB has made an important contribution in supporting the fiscal management reform program from 2004 to 2013. This support provided us a strong foundation for our recent efforts, including the Inland Revenue Act passed recently. I trust that the ADB will continue to support our fiscal reform endeavours, particularly as we take the challenge of servicing the external debt accumulated over the last decade. ADB's support in restoring basic infrastructure to assist with post-war resettlement has indeed been valuable, and we look forward to the ADB's continued support as this government is strongly committed to the reconciliation process.
In Sri Lanka, we have mobilized and invested $8.9 billion as at end of October 2017 in infrastructure, human capital development, agriculture and the financial sector, research, analysis, and knowledge sharing. We have responded to the government's needs in the conflict area to support the lives of the people. The Northeast Community Restoration and Development Project, approved by our board in 2001, was the first in a series of the assistance to the conflict-affected area of Sri Lanka.
The World Bank is of the view that Sri Lanka must immediately embrace fiscal consolidation with tighter policy in order to sustain GDP growth. Senior economist of the World Bank Sri Lanka, Ralph Van Doorn, said this speaking at a public dialogue on managing risk and creating opportunities for sustainable growth.
Why does Sri Lanka need fiscal consolidation? It's a very fair question to ask. It means spending less, taxing more. Why do we have to do that? Because in the past, it was okay to run fiscal deficits. For the last 30 years, you ran fiscal deficits. Sri Lanka now is at the verge of becoming an upper middle income country. So you not get that cheap debt anymore. You're borrowing increasingly on commercial terms. Interest rates of below 1% for the government. Now, between 2013 and 16, your interest rates became higher. And also there was a slowdown, and this episode was lower. It means you now have three forces pushing debt up, and only growth is keeping your debt to GDP ratio down. So then the question becomes very simple. How can Sri Lanka reduce the debt to GDP ratio? Well, clearly, you need more forces pulling debt down than pushing that up. So fiscal consolidation is not a choice, it's a necessity for Sri Lanka. By doing so, there are other benefits too. For example, if the government borrows less from the market, it means there's more credit available for the private sector to invest. So there are also other benefits that we need to think about. So the key takeaway here is you really need sustained growth, you need this new growth model, and you really need fiscal consolidation to manage your debt to GDP ratio well. Otherwise, your debt will just go up.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Welcome back. Now let's take a look at news from overseas. Zimbabwe's former Vice President Emmerson Mnangagwa returned to the capital Harare yesterday to a warm welcome 2 days ahead of his scheduled swearing-in ceremony as the country's new president. He vowed to create jobs in a country where some estimates say 90% of the people are unemployed.
Zimbabwe's former Vice President Emmerson Mnangagwa headed to the headquarters of the ruling ZANU-PF party for a briefing upon his arrival yesterday and addressed a cheering crowd later that evening.
I was born in 1980. Mugabe was in power. Up to today, for 3 generations, Mugabe has been in power. Everyone has been suffering because of Mugabe, and nothing was being done. And today marks the new independence.
On behalf of Zimbabwe, I am so happy. We are liberated. For our generation, I believe this is the new generation, this is the new beginning.
71-year-old incoming President Mnangagwa pledged his service to the people and urged all Zimbabweans to contribute in reviving the economy and creating jobs.
We are all Zimbabweans. We want to grow our economy. We want peace in our country. We want jobs in our country. We need also the cooperation of our neighbors in SADC. We need the cooperation of the continent of Africa. We need the cooperation of our friends outside the continent. That we shall achieve.
Mugabe resigned as Zimbabwe's president on Tuesday, a week after the army and his former political allies moved to end 4 decades of rule by a man once feted as an independence hero who became feared as a despot.
Police in Papua New Guinea have entered a former Australian-run detention centre in a bid to get asylum seekers who remain there to leave. Commenting on the incident, Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull said that asylum seekers residing at the detention camp should leave the centre and go to alternative accommodation on the island.
Hundreds of men have refused to leave the Manus Island Centre since it was closed on the 31st of October, citing fears for their safety in the local community. Police entered the Australian-run detention camp and ordered 380 asylum seekers occupying it to leave as they carried away food and water the men had stockpiled. The men have barricaded themselves in the Manus Island Centre for more than 22 days, defying attempts by Australia and Papua New Guinea to close the facility. Australian government said aim of the police operation was to move the men to a transit centre elsewhere on the island.
They should obey the law and the lawful authorities of Papua New Guinea. There are alternative facilities that have been made available with food, water, security, medical services. They're staying there is obviously designed. They think this is some way they can pressure the Australian government to let them come to Australia. Well, we will not be pressured.
Now let's take a look at some other stories making news across the world.
Bangladesh has signed a deal with Myanmar to return hundreds of thousands of Rohingya Muslims who fled a recent army crackdown. Bangladesh said it was the first step, while Myanmar said it was ready to receive Rohingyas as soon as possible. More than 600,000 have fled to neighbouring Bangladesh since violence erupted in Myanmar late in August. 2 two-year-old male and female giant pandas were released to nature today after receiving 2 years of survival training in southwest China. It is the second time in the world that 2 giant pandas were released at the same time. Meanwhile, in contrast, 3 wild bears were encountered by a county sheriff's deputy at a shopping area in North Lake Tahoe in the United States. A Mexican man who weighed more than half a ton is to have surgery in a bid to halve his weight. The 33-year-old had been dubbed the world's heaviest man following the 1-hour procedure. He will have to undergo 72 hours of intensive therapy to aid his recovery. An online auction offering over 1,100 celebrity memorabilia kicked off yesterday, including many unique items linked to late rapper Tupac. top plots include the rapper's original death certificate from when he was murdered in 1996 and handwritten lyrics of Like a Rolling Stone by Bob Dylan that the music legend wrote on a piece of paper in 2010, decades after the release of the song.
You are watching Sri Lanka's trusted news brand, Other Derana 24/7.
Welcome back. Now it's time for sports. Now, the Army Para Games 2017 kicked off at the Diagama Mahinda Rajapaksha Stadium yesterday. The event was inaugurated by the Commander of the Army, Lieutenant General Mahesh Senanayake.
550 plus differently able war heroes participate in the Army Para Games across 50 events. They include representations from 11 local regiments as well as foreign participations, including world-renowned disabled Korean athletes. Many events such as badminton, cycling, shooting, table tennis, weightlifting and wheelchair marathon concluded earlier, while only track and field events marked its start yesterday. The event will conclude tomorrow.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Let's now cross over to Katrina Chang at the Other Derana Weather Centre with your forecast first evening edition for the next 24 hours.
A very good evening and welcome to your Weather Centre for your forecast first evening edition. Now, if we take a look at the map, we can expect temperatures to vary between 20 and 30 degrees Celsius over the course of the next 24 hours. Now, a lower pressure zone can be developed in the central region of the island, moving downwards over to the southwest part of the island over the course of the day. Now, thunder showers can be expected in most parts of the northern region of the island, particularly in Trincomalee, Mannar, Jaffna, as well as the Batticaloa areas. Moving downwards, we can expect some thunder showers in the Colombo, Kandy and Galle areas. That is it from your Weather Centre tonight, but let's now take a quick look at your city-by-city forecast.
And that's it from us at First and 9. You can of course join us on Facebook as well as Twitter. But before we go, we'd like to take you to the mesmerizing ocean life around Sri Lanka, including footage of amazing sea creatures. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.